Well, last night we went out to the Loft Cinema for the first time in more than a year as they're allowing people to go back inside the facility. We actually had three tickets, my girlfriend and me, and of course, we were supposed to have a dear friend of the show, Charles Lynch, join us. And although he couldn't make it, unfortunately, I get this opportunity now to explain to him just what a big mistake it was to miss Riders of Justice.
I don't know what to say.
Riders of Justice stars Mads Mikkelsen, who American audiences may know as Hannibal from the show Hannibal. Mads Mikkelsen has had a wonderful few years, with Another Round being one of our favorite pictures of 2020, and he's come a long way from the European playing the American stereotype of a villain in Casino Royale. Riders of Justice is an unconventional film, and typically that means it's at least intriguing from a genre perspective. It's a movie that it was described as sort of a Coen Brothers type film, and that's just a lazy way of saying it's a dark comedy. I think that Riders of Justice does a great job of blending the kind of dark comedy style with a bit of action in a way that most films, like for instance a few weeks ago, Nobody, attempt to blend. Sometimes it's really just a game of balancing out your proportions, right? So much action over here, so much comedy over here, and then tonality to kind of modify, like adding salt and pepper. I think that Riders of Justice does a pretty unique and interesting job of taking sort of an action revenge story, but playing it through a very humanistic thread, where you've got a lot of characters you can relate to, whether they are scientists, who are usually the supporting characters, or Mads Mikkelsen as this soldier who comes home for revenge. And they're blended together in a way that's less Fargo, but more like if John Goodman from Barton Fink were surrounded by a shit ton of John Turturros. It's that kind of dark comedy where there's a lot of laughs, but it gets serious from time to time. The reason that the movie works so well is not just a very tight script, where for probably the first time in a while, Joe, I will say, not a single scene that I would cut. Not a single scene I would cut.
Not one.
Tight runtime. Every scene adds something to the characters you're following, and every character has a lot of pros and cons without overstaying their welcome or becoming dry, very, very dry. At the core, the movie is anchored by a great performance by Mads Mikkelsen, who is trying his best to evoke emotion with a very stone-faced expression. He's trying to say a lot with his eyes, say a lot with silence, and for the most part, playing a straight action hero in a world that doesn't quite call for it. He's surrounded by supporting characters that are as eccentric as they are intriguing, and for the most part, are able to drive the story forward without being too expository. What's the movie about? Well, again, I think it's probably best seen without too much explanation, but at its core, the film is an exploration of the question of whether or not events or coincidences are truly random, or if everything in life is truly the result of two events that come from four events that come from eight events, and so on and so forth, and how that affects day-to-day life. You can kind of think of it as the chaos theory meeting Magnolia, in a sense, right? Disparate characters who are brought together in a world that seems like it is poetically intertwined. And in many ways, this is what makes this movie, much like Another Round, work so well, that it is a pair of movies where the philosophy is at the core of the film, and every subplot, every character, every plot is an extension of that philosophy and exploring some greater human experience. And to be honest, while this is a dark comedy action, while we see that a lot in America, like Nobody a few weeks ago, and even to an extent the John Wick films trying to blend comedy in with its action, this film does a wonderful job of trying to find humor in the grotesque, or humor in the violence, or even finding humor in the depraved antagonists that we're facing in this film, without ever really getting into a territory where you just feel alienated, or you feel like the film is trying its best to shock you or to be sensationalist. It's a true masterclass in balancing how to have an audience go into a dark world while having a really fun time. With an ending I think it's quite deserved from a thematic standpoint, and what I would call one of the strangest Christmas films you could possibly see. Now, the biggest problem is that I'm not really sure where this is playing at the moment, as it's hard to find on streaming or on VOD.
Good news, here's an update. Since we've recorded this interview, I've actually found that, believe it or not, Riders of Justice is available on YouTube to rent or to buy. And if you can't find it anywhere else or cheaper, then go ahead and give Daddy Google some of your dollars.
However, if you're seeing a local art house cinema showing Riders of Justice, what you're in for is a unique experience that continues to show the elevation of Mads Mikkelsen as one of the greatest actors, I think, working today. He reminds me very much of Vincent Cassel in the 90s and early 2000s, where everything he touches, regardless of genre, ends up being interesting, unique, and distinct from itself, both from a performance standpoint, but also typically in terms of the type of scripts that he's choosing. But the film has moments of darkness and violence that I think for once in the theater, every single moment feels earned and feels like it plays in well thematically with what else is going on. There's not really much more I can say, except if you had a ticket to see this in one of its rare performances, it'd be a real bitch if you missed it. So go out and see if you can find Riders of Justice. You owe it to yourself.
Mads Mikkelsen!
You thought it was Mikkelsen, man? Why did you think it was Mikkelsen? Do you think it's Jack Nicholson?
It's not?
It's not Jack Nicholson at all.
Well, hey there. If you enjoyed this review, make sure to let us know by liking and subscribing so we can make sure you see our new videos in the future. In the meantime, why not go check out some of our other reviews, or some of our original content like Cold Flights, or the story of Russian director Larissa Shapitka. It ain't gonna hurt nothing. Go ahead. Please? Alright, have a good day.